Hello, my name is Debbie Boone, and I want to welcome you to my podcast, The Bend, where we explore how successful people navigated the path and emerged in a better place when life threw them an unexpected twist. It's inspired by one of my favorite sayings: the bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you fail to make the curve. These conversations will hopefully help you and inspire you to embrace your personal bend and to flourish. I hope you enjoy it, and if you need help with your own personal navigation and you're in veterinary medicine, please feel free to reach out to me at Debbie Boone to Manage Vets Consulting. Enjoy the bend and be inspired by our wonderful guest. Welcome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of The Bend. My name is Debbie Boone, and I am your host. Today, my guest is Robert Bills. Robert is a finance, art, and entertainment professional. Robert has the most varied background, I think, of any guest I've had. But he is now realizing his life's mission, working on impacting the welfare of animals. His muse for the creation of this entity was his puppy mill breeding dog, Chappy. Chappy is 11-pound Havanese who is now 19 and a half. And I'm really impressed with the 19 and a half, especially after a puppy mill start. So obviously, Robert is a good pet parent. He studied humane education at the Humane Society Academy. He's been constantly networking animals on Facebook and volunteered for years at the Anti-Cruelty Society of Chicago. He's a student of various schools of thought for solving animal overpopulation, animal abuse and torture, and animal profiteering. So really want to hear a lot about that. Now, here's the interesting part. He's a former actor and director. Dropped a little Second City on me just a few minutes ago. He was a lead, produced Off-Broadway theater, a gallerist in Chicago's West Loop, lecturer in finance. So we have creative and math going on here. He's taught at University of Illinois, Northwestern, and DePaul. He has an MBA in finance from the University of Chicago and is an IRS enrolled agent, which is very handy because he's got a charity that we can all take advantage of. He is certified in child life from the University of California, Santa Barbara, and then drawing and sculpture from the School of Art Institute in Chicago, School of Continuing Studies. He is the founder of chappyandfriends.org, which we absolutely want to talk about, which is an incubator for animal welfare projects, which caught my attention somehow on a loop in a feed on LinkedIn. And I went, hey, can we talk about this? I'm really interested in this. So Robert, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to come on and talk to my veterinary audience.
Thanks for having me, Deb. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your journey from actor, director to animal welfare.
Yeah. So I really started as a trader, and I was a bond trader for 15 years. And along the way, I got beat up a little bit. I was sort of an average trader. But I was around for 15 years, so I did some things right. But definitely wanted to move on, and had always been interested in doing something artistic or creative. And that's when I started taking some improv classes at Second City, and eventually I got into the conservatory. And as I mentioned to you earlier, I ended up in as teammates with a couple of very famous Second City people that, as I mentioned to you, that they've hosted the Golden Globes. So that was pretty fun. And I continued to pursue that. I became a director and producer. You mentioned that. Spent some time in New York. And I also had a gallery in the West Loop for 3 years. That was really great. Really loved being around artistic types, both, or creatives, let's say, in general. But never quite found my stride there, and had always loved animals. And somewhere around 15 years ago, I figured out that that was my mission in life. And so, but then it became, how do I, manifest that in my life so that I can actually be doing it on a full-time basis?
Yeah.
That makes an impact. I tried, I volunteered at animal cruelty downtown Chicago. And while I liked that and I was interested, I'm not really a hands-on type of a animal person, certainly in with my own animals, but day in, day out, not really my thing. And kind of looked into some possible things in management at a place like that. That didn't quite fit. And then in my travels in theater, I kept bumping up against an organization called Fractured Atlas, which is a fiscal sponsor to the arts. So, and what that means is if you're a small theater company trying to get going, or a dance company, or a sculptor that's doing a public project, it's hard to raise money because you're not 501c3.
Mm-hmm.
So what a fiscal sponsor does is they facilitate fundraising for non-501c3s. We're 501c3, and we effectively lend them our nonprofit status, our exempt status, so that they can take in donations through us, and then we distribute them to, and then we will distribute them to our projects, the people on the front lines of animal welfare.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to keep an eye on them, we
Sure.
have to make sure they're not privately inuring funds, and also that they stay within our mission.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so they have to do expense reports, and it's. I think it's a little harder to do what we do than the arts side of it that Fractured Atlas does, because we have lives at risk, and
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
know, your
Yeah.
theater company, yeah, somebody might sprain their ankle or something, but we have to be sure that there
Sure.
aren't people that are
Yeah.
running kill pins for horses, or puppy mills, or puppy flippers, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So we take that quite seriously. We do investigate people quite a bit before we bring them on.
Yeah, yeah, that makes good sense. I know, one of the things that a lot of veterinary hospitals do, and I'm sure you're probably aware of this in your work, is they will have what's called an angel fund, and basically it's clients just kind of stick money in a jar, and that it's very informal, and they use it to help people who's they've kind of tapped out with animal care at the top of their budget. But I have always recommended that to my clients and to my audience is that they partner with somebody like Chappy and Friends or the Veterinary Care Foundation. AVMA has a foundation. But I think what I liked particularly about what you guys are doing is that it really is very organized in how you are fundraising. And, I personally had a client when I was managing a hospital who was kind of like my own private donor. And whenever we
Right.
had a case, I would just call him up and go, "Hey, here's what's going on with this dog." And he'd go, "How much you
Yeah.
need, Deb?" And I went, "How about $700?" He'd go, "Okay, put it on my
Yeah.
credit card." Now, not
Wow.
everybody has the luxury of a well-off client who's willing to do that, but it was something that it was kind of my ace in the hole. So whenever we got into a situation that somebody needed a little extra finance, we had it. I've always liked the Veterinary Care Foundation because it works very much like what you're talking about with Chappie, and that you actually can solicit funds for your veterinary hospital and then have a pool of money to care for these cases that come in that you don't want to euthanize them because the people don't have the money, especially if they're a young, otherwise healthy animal. But what do you do, right? You're still trying to run a business. So I love the idea of what you're doing. So I do like to ask my guests this kind of question. Obviously, somewhere life threw you a curveball because you went from bond trader to philanthropy in
Yeah.
animal care. What was the thing that flipped you? And was it Chappie?
Well, yeah, he was certainly part of it. I think the biggest curveball was probably about 15 years into a career as a trader, and some other things that were designed to make money. I finally figured out that I'm not motivated by money. So I had all this time and effort, and MBA, in finance and accounting, and lots of different positions within the industry, and eventually coming to the realization, wow, I am not I really don't. All I care about is having enough,
Yeah.
and that's not really in sync with people who are trying to get rich, And after 15 years of trying to get rich and not being rich, I had to kind of examine, what's going on here. And I'm really not willing to do the things that are required of people. I don't have anything against money. I think money's good, but it's not. That's not. In fact, I still trade. I was trading this morning before I got on here. So that's sort of it. That was the curveball. And then that's when I started the acting, started taking some classes, started taking some classes at School of the Art Institute here in Chicago, which is a really great and an amazing institution, one of the top art schools in the country. I mean, in the world, really.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah,
uh,
I love to ask my guest, how did you overcome the fear of that? Because there's a steady source of income, it's the known, and a lot of times stepping out into the unknown is almost paralyzing for some people. And other people seem to thrive on chaos. So how did you do maybe the self-talk that says, okay, I'm going to go take this risk and go try acting from out of bond trading?
yeah. Well, bond trading was a pretty healthy income, and uh, you know, you could kind of rely on it, although sometimes you'd have a bad year and you'd have to move to another place and there's a lot of stress and all that. But, at core, anybody who's a trader, especially in those days, a lot of the stuff is, IT related and very uh, program oriented these days in terms of trading. So emotions might not come into it, but that wasn't around when I did it. And or it was just starting to show its face.
Mhm.
But at core, we're risk takers. So uh, and I had a little head start, not a huge head start, like some people coming out of that business. But and then when I started taking, first time I got a laugh on stage, you know, that was like the new drug, you know.
I can understand that. Yeah, I can understand that. Somebody said to me, I couldn't do what you do because I do speak at conferences, and I went, it's just like riding a bike. Once you start to practice it, you get good at it, and then you really like it because
Yeah,
it's the energy of the audience. If you're good at it, let's say if you're not very good at it, maybe you don't really like it. But for me, my subject has always been something I'm very passionate about. So engaging an audience for me is a lot of fun. And I,
yeah,
kind of get over the initial jitters and nerves when you're getting ready to step out on the stage, and take a few deep breaths and then just go for it. And I always tell new speakers, is look, your audience wants you to win. They want you to be good. They're
sure.
not out there
Right.
hoping that you fail. Of course, now maybe if you're a comic, maybe they are kind of hoping you flub a little bit because they like to heckle you some.
Yeah. Generally speaking, in improv, which is working with the other actors to create something, you know, the audience is pretty cooperative. They're not interceding because there's something going on, as opposed to somebody standing up there as a stand up by themselves. They're pretty exposed
Mhm.
to, especially if you're bombing. People take it out on you, or somebody's always a smart aleck that wants to, try to interject themselves and show everybody how smart they are.
Right.
And
Yes,
the,
yes, that's true. I think that's in every aspect of life. In veterinary medicine, a lot of times we run across people who have incredible amounts of misinformation that they've read, God
yes,
forbid, on the internet. And how do we navigate that? Because for some reason, people like to think that they have the inside scoop, and it sometimes is completely contradictory to the science of things. But
yeah,
it is a challenge and a fine line that we walk in veterinary medicine in order to get the animals the care that they need and still kind of placate the client who's coming at you with all kinds of strangeness that you're like, that's not how this works. I always think about that commercial that was on TV where people were posting, the old ladies have all the pictures on the wall, and this is going, I'm posting these on my wall, and then her friend goes, "This is not how this works at all." That's just what you want to say sometimes out there in the world. This is not how this works at all. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I'm really curious about some of your education at the Humane Society Academy and some of these things. I mean, I've been in vet med for 40 years, so I'm not even familiar with some of these things because I worked on the other side of the fence, so to speak. But tell me kind of, what that looks like. What does that training look like when you're talking about animal overpopulation, animal abuse? And I mean, I have friends who are forensic veterinarians, so I know that they are,
yeah.
very much trained in a lot of these kind of things too.
I think we have Martha as a friend in common,
Hmm.
right? Yeah, and she's a project actually. She has a project with Chappy Friends as a
Okay.
forensic
Yeah.
veterinarian.
So do they, I mean, are you, when you're getting this kind of education at the Humane Society Academy, are they talking to you about how to work animal cruelty cases and, or is it more big picture stuff than
It's more
in
big
the project?
picture stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean the other stuff I've been interested in because I like to be ready to, uh, you know, talk with our projects about, especially if somebody doesn't know quite what sort of project they want to do. Usually, people who come to us know what they want to do,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
especially, of course, with the animal hospital thing and the Angel Fund, that's very
Sure.
specific, and that's relatively new for us. The In terms of the education at Humane Academy, it was an online program, and they had, I think, I had to take 3 or 4 classes. They were really good. And taught by people who really knew what they were doing. It's been a while since I took them, so I think it's just part of my overall, uh, knowledge now
Hmm.
that, but I don't know that I could recall what the specific
Oh, I
classes.
understand. Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. Like there's,
One of the things,
I have so much that I have consumed so much information. I couldn't tell you when and where, but it's all like stuck in there in the brain somewhere. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you decided to form Chappy and Friends, and to let the audience know, Chappy is your dog, and he was
yeah,
a puppy mill breeding dog,
yeah.
Havanese poodle cross, right? And so he was in a Tennessee puppy mill. Did you find him in your work with the Humane Society and stuff in the puppy mill at on the ground, or how did that come about?
We actually went there to, my wife and I decided to adopt a dog, and um, we went to Paws here in Chicago, and we went to Animal Cruelty, and they had just received, within the last couple of weeks, maybe within the last month, 200 dogs
Oh,
from a house. They had 200 dogs were rescued from a house in Tennessee, and animal cruelty took, I think, 91 or 92 of them. And we went in, and Chappie was there, and he was a little bit vocal. He came over and kind of let us have it a little bit. He wasn't shy, as some of the others were retiring. And then we had him out for quite a while. And then we decided we wanted to think about it because we had another pet. We wanted to be sure that we didn't want to upset the balance too much bringing the pet in. But anyway, we overnight we decided we were gonna do it. So I called up animal cruelty and I said, anti-cruelty, I mean, and I said, is we're calling about Chappie. Is he still available? He goes, and the lady seemed a little unsure. She goes, no, it looks like he was adopted, but she didn't seem too sure. And so I went to my gallery to do some work later that day. And as I was driving home, I said, I'm just going to drive by and take a look. Sure enough, there he was in the in this cage. I could see from the outside, barking his head off. Okay, that's it. That's the sign from God. He's home.
he's
So
here.
that was
He's
it.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I love it. The dog that I have now is a retired show dog that I got through networking with a friend. And I drove to Detroit from North Myrtle Beach, talked my husband into 17 hours of travel to go and get this dog.
Yeah.
But the one prior to that, I was working in the animal hospital, and we also managed the county shelter. And I brought a news crew up. I was working on some PR work to get, the animal out in the world and make a splash a little bit. And there was this cutest little dog up there with this unbelievable underbite, and his whole body was just wagging. And my dog had died about 5 months earlier, and I was kind of in between pets and taking a break. And I thought about that dog, and I thought about that dog, and I called up and I said, "Tell me about that dog," the lady that worked at the shelter. And she said, "Oh my God, that's the sweetest dog. We've been hiding him from animal control because he's like his number is up." And I went, "Oh,
Mhm.
bring him down to the animal hospital. Let's check him out." And so sure enough, he was heartworm negative. He didn't have parasites. He was covered in fleas, and he was a solid mat. And that was Rocky. And Rocky was just the best dog. And I was traveling a lot, so he was my husband's buddy. And they would sit on the couch and watch Duke basketball games together while I was on the road. But yeah, he lived to be 15, so not
Wow.
too bad from a and we don't really know how old he was when we got him. We guessed that he was
Right.
around two. So it's
Yeah.
it's like that. But I think uh, taking opportunity to rescue animals from shelter environments. I looked a lot down here, but there's only big dogs seem to be in the shelters down here where I am, and I don't have the house or the time for big dogs or the yard for a big dog.
Yeah.
So I just wanted a little fuzzy white dog, and that's how I ended up with a retired Bichon from the show
Yeah.
circuit. Yeah, yeah. But let's talk about Chappy and Friends, because I really want the veterinary community to understand how this works. And the tax status that you're talking about is really cool, because it's kind of like you said, you get to borrow somebody else's work. And I've worked with veterinarians who have started their own charitable funds, and it
Yeah.
is a lot of work. It is, you have to have
Yeah.
a board. There are very
Yeah.
strict guidelines. My friends and I just started a nonprofit for veterinary association for a veterinary receptionist, and it is a 50 a 501c6. So
Oh, okay.
it's a different entity. It's a
Yeah.
six
Yes.
instead of a
Yeah. I'm
three.
on a
Yeah.
501.
But it is a lot of work. The bylaws, the legal stuff, the IRS
Yeah.
stuff, all those kind of things. So the advantage of it, I think, is you can solicit money that is tax deductible to your donors. There is a tax advantage to them. And so I think you have a opportunity of soliciting larger amounts of money to be able to put
Yes.
into your fund than you
Yes.
typically would. Yeah.
Yes.
So tell us, like, how, when did you start Chappie? How old is this organization? Because I just found out about it myself.
Yeah. Well, we're about 7.5 years old total from getting our 501c3, and it took us about I guess we're coming up on 7 years old in August. Well, I guess this month, but we got our first project about 6.5 years ago. So it took us a while to find those projects and bring them on. It was that experience of seeing Fractured Atlas and all that stuff going on in the arts, and I said, "Ding, ding, ding!" I've been looking for some way to fulfill my mission with animals. And I'm like, I wonder if there are fiscal sponsors for animals. I went into a directory and I searched where all fiscal sponsors are basically listed. And there literally was nobody that was a fiscal sponsor to animals. Now, I think there are a few regional firms
Mhm.
and local firms that will do it, but they typically charge a fair amount, and they also do a lot of different things. So they might be doing programs for the homeless, programs for education, and things that sort of tell me that it's all well and good, and we can use all the help we can get. But they probably don't know animals like we do, you
Mhm.
know. And
Mhm.
so we only do animals, and we're nationwide. We literally have a project right now on in Avalon on Catalina Island, and we have a project on Cape Cod. So,
Both sides of the
yeah, right,
continent.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have a
Yeah.
number in between.
hmm
So
Yeah. I was
go
gonna
ahead.
say, have you had a lot of veterinary hospitals sign up for this yet, Robert?
We're new to the field.
Okay.
Uh, so we're just starting to get the word out. And in fact, we're hoping to meet at AVMA convention. That was our first real
Yeah.
outreach where we started to be able to let vets know what we
hmm
do and, how they could benefit from it.
hmm
And, so we have one right now. We have another one that's considering it.
Okay.
The practice we have is I think it's about 8 vets. So it's a fairly decent size
Mhm.
animal hospital. And they're just great to work with. And so we're looking forward to bringing a lot more on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because, and the thing about it is, I think that to focus on it more like first started, I tended to focus on it more like how it's a benefit to new rescues that aren't tax exempt, Uh, but when you look at the animal hospital side with all the issues of stress and that vets experience
Mhm.
now too, I see it as uh, helping the helping the client, of course, the pet parent who is having trouble affording the procedure, and of course the pet who benefits the from getting the care, but also reduces stress
Mhm.
on the vet who is happy to see that there's some way for them to be able to afford the care. Uh, and there are other types of course, there are other types of ways for people to finance stuff. The one advantage we have is somebody else is given the money. So
Exactly.
yeah,
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 exactly. Yeah. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. In veterinary medicine, I think one of our greatest stressors is the constant battle with finance and economic euthanasia, or having to reduce the level of care that we want to provide because the client just can't not afford it. And I think you had to have a lot of tools in your toolbox. So you have billing options through finance companies, but not everybody qualifies for that. You have, things like, care credit. I think most hospitals will have that. Vet billing is another opportunity, but then hopefully people would have pet insurance, but that again, they're not going to always get paid up front for that. They have to pay and get reimbursed. And then sometimes people have none of those things and no resources. And many, many years ago, I even created, I think it's still on my website on my resource page, a list of ideas like how could people finance their animal care? Because especially in emergency and stressful, urgent situations, people's mind just goes into lockdown and they can't think, oh, I could call my boss and maybe get an advance on my paycheck and then take care of my animal. Or I have friends and family I could call. There's things that I could sell. There's things that I could, pawn or, title stuff. I mean, there's a lot of things that people could do, but they don't know how to do those things. Can't think of
right.
them in the moment. So I just kind of created a list and said, here's some ideas. And then of course, crowdfunding is another thing that was, years ago, it was kind of a new thing to get on social media and go, hey, my dog needs care. Now I think it's fairly common for people to find a reason to want to help, and complete strangers will help too, that just are advocates for animals and want to be uh, generous in those moments. But having a vehicle is important, and this is really a low barrier to entry. I mean, $120 a year is
Right.
next to nothing to be able
Yeah,
to do this. And then you take 7% of all the donations is how you survive as an entity.
yeah.
And so I think that's certainly reasonable too. And then we have the ability to raise these funds and be able to help animals. I do usually tell people, figure out what you're going to do with it before something is standing in front of you, because if this is a client you've known for a long time and you want to make it for clients that you know you've seen for years and they just need some help, okay, that's fine. If it's for the Good Samaritan that finds something on the side of the road, which happens all the time, then maybe you
Sure.
want to make it your Good Samaritan fund. Or if it's for, animals under the age of 2 that have a high survival rate. I mean, you don't want to take this money and not use it to the best capability that you can. So
Sure.
do you offer ideas about the strategy behind how to figure this out beforehand?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me say in terms of facilitating the taking in of the money with Champion Friends, you get a unique URL that goes directly to a fundraising page, which you can help design or you can design, and then there's a QR code associated with that. And what we do is we give each one of our hospitals a number of different posters that talk about the Angel Fund, and the QR code is right there, and we give them enough posters to have one in each exam room.
Mhm.
So while people are waiting for the vet to do what they're doing, I think we get a lot of. I think the hospital we have right now gets a lot of donations that way.
Yeah.
So it's a good deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
when I was managing hospitals, one of the things that we used to do was make donations in a pet's name when they passed away.
yeah.
And we would send them usually to the veterinary school because we were in North Carolina. So we sent them and donated to NC State. But I think that practices could donate to their angel fund. And
Sure.
I think then thanking the client and say, pet, this money has been donated in your pet's name, then I think the
That's
client
good.
would have an
Yeah.
opportunity to donate in their pet's name, and then they would take advantage of that and would appreciate that.
And one thing we do have an agreement that gets signed between the two of us, protecting us to make sure that we're, staying in good stead with the IRS.
Hmm.
But also the client can put parameters on exactly how their veterinarians could draw on this money.
Okay.
So it might be a certain amount, not more than a certain amount. It might be not more than once a year, not more than twice in a lifetime. You don't want people to become reliant on it. Uh, and generally speaking, well, this is totally up to the hospital. All we care about is that it goes for animals.
Hmm.
But you may want to say it's for emergencies and not just for standard care,
Right. Right.
that kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
want to have been in good standing with the hospital
Hmm.
before this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want people just coming in off the street with their,
Well,
because they heard that you got this fund and
exactly. Yeah, that's one of the things I'd always caution people about is if they did do like the Veterinary Care Foundation or they're doing Chappy is you don't want to put the word out that goes, hey, we give away free vet care. We have a
yeah,
fund
right. Yeah,
because then
yeah,
everybody and their brother will come in out of the woodwork. You want to have very, very strict guidelines for it and decide ahead of time what it will be used for. And even if you wanted to raise money on your website, say this is how we use this. This is for emergency care, or this is for established client care in emergency situations only, or a Good Samaritan fund when people find stray animals on the road. You just say this is how we use this money. And it's determined by the veterinary hospital. Now, how does the veterinary hospital tap into the money when they need to use it? On your
oh
side
yeah.
is
So
yeah.
they just send us an expense report, and we will release it generally because they've been building up a fund. I can
Mm-hmm.
release it on short notice.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, get a turnaround in a day or two.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as the expense report doesn't have to be formal, is within the parameters that they have established for how the money gets used. The one thing so that's it,
Okay. Sounds pretty easy. Sounds like we could just
yeah,
kind of send you a copy of the invoice and a
Yeah,
little bit of the
yeah,
medical history and say, this is
yeah,
how we used it. Yeah,
exactly.
that's very cool. Well, I think that this is a great tool for veterinarians and for veterinary teams to be able to offer some care for animals that they, typically would not be able to care for. And as you said, it breaks our heart to have to turn people away. But then again, we also want to be able to pay our team, and we already underpay them. So, not being
Yeah,
able to or giving away a certain amount of stuff. I always used to tell my clients, I said, look, if you want to give away, it's your money. I mean, it's your practice. You can give it away if you want to, but who do you care more about, some stranger, or do you care about the people who make your business survive every single day? You've got to
right.
take care of your people in order for you to be able to take care of these animals. But have a strategy in your charity. You can't just
Yeah.
willy-nilly give things away. I mean, I've seen veterinarians just discount things and never even tell the client that they gave them a discount, a gift. If you don't know
Oh,
you got a gift, there's no
yeah,
point in giving it, right?
yeah,
You're
no,
just giving people free stuff and they don't even know, they think that's normal. So I feel like a strategy, and this is what I preach a lot as a consultant, is we need to have a plan for things. And this is part of a toolkit that we should definitely take advantage of in order to be
yes.
able to help pets. As you started Chappy, um, how did you how did you get the word out? Did you, I mean, obviously, we've had a conversation that we connected through LinkedIn just because I happened to see it in a
Yeah,
conversation. But how did you kind of use your network to get started? Because I'm a huge advocate for the value of a network.
yeah, yeah, no, I mean, I started on Facebook. I had, you know, I got 850 friends and 650 of them are, animal people. And another 75 are friends from high school or college. So, so I just started letting people know what we are doing. And I got listed on the fiscal sponsor. There's a fiscal sponsor directory, and they list specifically that you're an animal welfare project, and then it tells something about what you do and what's available.
Mhm.
And I'd say 2/3 of the people we get come through there, and uh, and then and then I've started to really up my. I'm trying to uh, be more involved with LinkedIn in terms of, especially connecting with the vet community.
Mhm.
And I'm about to write an article about what it is we do for animal hospitals. That'll be published on LinkedIn, and we're going to submit it also to a number of vet practice magazines, and see if we
Mhm.
can get it published. But so and then of course AVMA was great for us because we did have a booth.
Mhm.
It was a little bit out in ducks, but since we paid about 1/8 of what everybody else paid, uh,
Exactly. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't complain too much. And we had a great number of people who came by, and ended up with a list of about 40 vets that thought it was a good idea.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to rouse them once they get home. I can't
Yes.
imagine I can't imagine what they're busy with.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. After you go to a meeting and you do pay the price, when you come back, it's
yeah,
like everybody that you put off is now there, and you gotta
yeah,
play catch up from it. But
yeah,
yeah, and there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot, so much overwhelming information. I think when you go to these
yeah.
meetings, you just come back and go, "Wow, what was that thing I really thought was cool?" And I can't remember
Yeah,
the name of it,
right.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
Well, we're kind of doing a similar thing with our North American Veterinary Receptionist Association, because we are just getting started. We're just getting our website launched, and so I kind of feel your pain, like trying to get the word out. And the three of us that have started this thing, we thought, well, we'll just drip market it a little bit, and we'll put a post out, and then we'll just kind of put some posts all along. And we put one post out and we're completely overwhelmed with the response. And we went, uh-oh, we're not
really.
ready. We're not ready.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I have about 22,000 followers on
Oh,
LinkedIn.
okay.
And
Yeah,
so all of a
Sure.
sudden everybody's like, oh, it's about time. This is a great idea. We really need to support these folks. And I think it's important that the CSRs know about things like Chappy because they're the ones who have to deal with the money all the time. And
Yes.
and they are very much an important part of getting this information out about, are people struggling to pay, who needs what, in some kind of financial support, and then having these tools available for them to be able to help clients. I know a lot of times as the manager, if my staff couldn't manage the situation, it got turfed up to me, and then I would take care of it. But it still, they knew the tools that we had available to us to use, and most of the time they had it, they had it pat.
Yeah.
But that's a training thing. So we want to make sure that
Yeah.
they're trained on all these things and that they can learn about that. One of the things that I like to ask my guests is, looking back on your life and these decisions that you made in your career, what advice would you give people out there that think they have an idea that they might want to, put a little effort behind, and or maybe just jump in?
Well, I think do a little bit of research. Don't get bogged down in the research, however. A lot of people like to have all their uh, T's crossed and I's dotted and get everything ready. And then they go out and, find that, and this is what particularly if you're considering a certificate or a degree at a college, be sure that there's actually jobs available and research that really deep. That's not necessarily the case. And schools are, I think the top end schools are all seeing, full enrollments, but there are a lot of schools that aren't as full as they used to be. And they're more than happy to sell you a certificate or a degree.
Mm,
Isn't necessarily gonna, I mean, I always believe in education enriches no matter what, but you may end up applying some of that stuff in a different career than you thought you were going to. So be sure it's there. But for the most part, just get started,
mm.
be willing to fail, take some lumps and then and learn from those lumps and then go back at it. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I love the don't be afraid to fail. If
Yeah.
we especially veterinarians are such perfectionists,
Yeah.
and I'm glad because truthfully, if they're not close to perfect, things die. So we want to make sure that they take their job seriously, and everyone I've ever met really, really does. But there can be decision gridlock involved in perfectionism too, to where if you really think that you have a good idea and you want to move forward, or you have some unique new offering that you think the public would appreciate and that would help animals, then you can't overthink it to the point where you just don't get to do anything. And sometimes just the act of saying yes and then thinking about it later works out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
there's an old saying that once you commit, then the whole world starts to sort of orient around you and be drawn to you
Hmm.
to do stuff. So uh, I'd say try not to spend all your savings in the first 6 months if you can
Yes. Yeah.
pursuing the new thing. Maybe keep
Exactly.
that as hard as it is, keep that job and work at night or
Yeah.
go time and keep something coming in while you figure it out because
Yeah.
you'll probably get thrown some curveballs. But
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, when I started my consulting business, it was in 2008 in the middle of the Great
oh,
Recession.
wow,
Yes, and I got laid off from the practice that I was the chief operating officer, and I thought, I know everybody in this industry at that point. Now I know a whole lot more now, but I thought, yeah, I'll have a job in a week, but nobody was hiring because they were all cutting back. And so my husband said, you've been doing this consulting on the side, and you've always wanted to do it. Why don't you just do it? And I went,
yeah,
okay, good. That was kind of all the affirmation that I needed.
yeah,
And I had, unemployment, and I had Cobra for insurance, and I just called up everybody I knew and said, this is what I'm going to do. And fortunately for me, I built a reputation with the local sales reps, and they went, great, we're putting you to work. And immediately I started being the value added person that they brought into their client hospitals, and the rest, as they say, is history. But yeah, it really helped that I had that financial cushion. Not that it was what I was making, but it was still a little bit of money coming in, and it gave me the grace of time to be able to build some content and get started. So yeah, make a plan. You just don't quit your job and go, I think I'm going to go do this
Yeah, right.
thing.
No, that's not the way to don't. Yeah, yeah,
Not the
right,
way,
right.
not the way to
Yeah,
do that. Yeah.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
no, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
So Robert, anything else you want to tell us about, Chappie, or the work you're doing, or any of the, maybe the projects, some of the projects that you have funded that the audience
yeah,
might find to be interesting?
yeah. Well, one of our first projects was a lady had been a show horse rider who didn't like the how the horses were basically just discarded once they were no longer useful, in competing. And so she started a project and was in the process of getting her own 501(c)(3). And but she came to us, and um, she also eventually took on thoroughbreds. So needless to say, she needed to raise a lot of
Oh
money,
yeah.
and which was nice for us. And she was quite adept at raising money, getting $50,000 donations at a crack from donor advised funds. So it helps to be in the horsey set. Another
Yeah.
thing that helps is to, if you could somehow look like a Ralph Lauren model. I mean, yeah, it, and
Yeah.
she's composed and a spokesperson type person anyway. So
Hmm.
she did it well and went on to her own project. So that was interesting. We have a we have a small animal project called Chicken Nugget and Gang in Indiana. That's really cool, and they have a lot of so all kinds of small animals, and they try to adopt a lot of bunnies, guinea pigs, chickens. Chicken Nugget was a real person, uh, and and a pet. And then what else? We have a lady in upstate New York, Pony Up Rescue Collective, who does a great job with. She brings in horses, and then she sets up a fundraiser for each one individually.
Oh,
And she's been quite adept at raising money and finding people to give.
oh, I
And
love that. Individualizing it. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then we have East Oakland Pet Support. Connie Bachelor in East Oakland is she's sort of a shelter intervention. She tries to prevent animals from going into the shelter
Mhm.
by helping people with low or no means to take care of their pets, trying to intercede with them so that they can keep their pets. We got a lot of, there are many others, and I don't mean to uh, not mention every one of them, but yeah, so those are some of the projects that
Yeah.
we've had.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's very interesting. There's, I think with the thoroughbreds, it made me think I have a client who has a licensed veterinary technician, and she and one of her friends will go and get these kind of racehorses that didn't quite make the cut, and they retrain them to be hunter
yes,
jumpers. And
right.
then they have sold, I think they're on their maybe second or third horse.
Yeah,
And these horses are doing great. I mean, they're
yeah,
just acclimated beautifully to being a kid's horse that
right.
always wanted one, right? And there's so
Yeah,
many. I was a horse girl growing up. I had everything under the sun, from a Shetland pony to saddlebred. And there's so many kids out there who would love to have a horse that just,
yes.
this is a good opportunity. It's good for the horse, good for the kid. Maybe not the parent's pocketbook. I kind of horses kind of like a boat, right? You just pour money into it a lot of times,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you they could get expensive, or they don't have to be. If you just want to ride them around out in the pasture and have a good time with them, which is what I did with mine. I didn't go show. I just like to have
yeah.
them. Yeah. But yeah, I think you're doing great work here and really supporting other people who just they kind of need that backroom infrastructure, and they're willing to go out and do the physical hands-on stuff. But the structure makes a lot of difference, especially when you're trying to legally raise money and keep it in between the guardrails for the IRS, and want to make sure that they're doing it right. So tell us a fun fact about you. Do you have, well, you have many talents, a secret talent, favorite song, something people might be surprised to know.
I'm a dancer.
Are you
Uh,
a dancer?
well, when I became an actor, I looked pretty awkward on stage because I was 6'3" at the time. I'm down to 6'2" and thinking, so I took ballet and tap and jazz at Giordano Dance here in Chicago. It's famous. Gus Giordano was a famous jazz dance. He's one of the developers of jazz dance.
Oh,
And anyway, I wasn't very good at that, but I had always I liked dancing and I liked big band music and stuff. And so I started swing dancing,
ah,
doing Lindy Hop and blues dancing.
okay.
And uh, I found I found that uh, having that formal background, I knew how to spot to do turns and I could move and turn and stuff.
Mhm.
I found that even though I wasn't good at it, when they told me what to do in jazz class, I was I got to be very good as a social dancer, and I was able to incorporate those things. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
fun.
yeah,
That's fun.
yeah,
Well, you may not know this, but I live in the shag dancing capital of
oh
the
yeah,
United States.
yeah,
And it's really funny because when people don't know dance and you say,
yeah,
"Oh, we can teach people how to shag," there's
yeah,
dead silence in the room
yeah.
because they're thinking like the English version of Austin
That they
Powers.
already know
Yes,
how.
and they're like, "What?" I stopped some people in their tracks doing a party planning one day and said, "Oh, we can have shag instructors come." And they're like, "What?" No. So shag is the state dance of South Carolina, and it's just
Yeah,
kind of it's a slow jitterbug, so to
yeah,
speak.
right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so they have contests here every 6 months. There is a migration from all over, shag clubs, and dancing is a big thing where we live. So if you ever come to South Carolina, if you ever want to come down the road, we can go shagging.
Oh, great, great. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah.
actually had a group within our group. I started sort of in the Gap Kids time, so back in the late 90s,
Hmm.
but we had a group within our group that did shag.
Hmm.
I don't think I ever picked that up. I
Yeah.
did pick up Balboa, actually, which is also kind of a similar type of
Hmm.
dance.
Well,
Yeah,
I like you. I was as a child, I took tap ballet, and then
yeah.
I took it for years. And then when I was in high school, I took modern jazz. So a lot of dance in my background too. And then I do love to dance. So yeah,
Fun.
I don't, that's not particularly why I love the beach more. This, when I came to the beach, it was like, you can always go dance somewhere down here
Yeah,
where I live. Okay. Anything else you'd like to say, or let's talk about like how people can reach you and find out more about Chappie. Um, Contact information we will absolutely put in the show notes.
sure.
But,
Well, let me just say that I would recommend anybody that's trying to get going or trying to make a change or whatever, live in a big world. Don't live in a world that's defined just by your family and your friends. Uh, and it might get a little uncomfortable. I was pretty uncomfortable, right? I had graduated from University of Chicago with an MBA in finance, and I told my dad I was going to become an actor. That as time went on, they just oriented themselves around me, and but yeah, press the boundaries of your world, live in the big world, and look for the connections, the way that things, you know, uh, that you've done in the past connect to what you're doing now.
yeah, I gave a talk one day to some students at North Carolina State, and they were all like pre-vet, so they're like laser focused on this. And I went, look, guys, you're thinking right now that your career is going to be this linear path. It's going to look more like a drunken sailor on Saturday.
Yeah.
You just get
Yeah.
that into your head, and all those things you will learn from and you'll bring it into the final thing of like what your big mission is and what you're
Right.
supposed to do. So it's all a learning. It's all
Yeah.
for learning, and it's okay to fail. It's okay to make a mistake, and sometimes it's okay just to look stupid and
Yeah.
keep moving on. But that's all
Well,
right.
thank you, because
Yeah.
yes, I've done that many times.
Yes. Well, thank you again for taking the time to actually build this platform for animals and to do all that you do to help them. And, I've spent my life working to try to help animals and help animal people help animals. So you're just adding to my toolbox, Robert, and I really, really do appreciate it. For the audience, I want to thank you for listening today to this episode of The Bend. We will have all Robert and Chappy and Friends information on the my dog just peeking around the corner here, on the show notes so that you can take advantage of this platform and help a few of those animals out that you haven't been able to help in the past. So thank you all very much for listening today.